The mountains of Kunar province slept beneath a pale Afghan moon. Cold air drifted through the valleys, carrying the scent of pine and dust. In the quiet hours before dawn, a team of 4 US Navy SEALs moved silently along a steep ridgeline, their footsteps muffled by loose shale and moss. Operation Red Wings had begun a mission born from intelligence reports, satellite photos, and weeks of planning. Their objective was clear: locate Ahmad Shah, a Taliban-aligned insurgent commander responsible for ambushes that had claimed the lives of dozens of American and Afghan troops. His militia was terrorizing the Peck district, using the rugged terrain as both shield and weapon. The SEALs were tasked to find him, confirm his position, and set the stage for a larger assault inside the Chinook helicopter earlier that night. The air had been tense and thick with the sound of rotor blades cutting through the dark. Petty Officer Marcus Luttrell sat across from Lieutenant Michael Murphy, the mission commander, who reviewed a small laminated map under a dim red light. Beside them, Petty Officers Matthew Axelson and Danny Dietz double-checked their weapons, their faces painted black and green, eyes fixed with quiet determination. The four had trained for countless nights like this. But every man knew that Afghanistan's mountains were unforgiving, a place where technology, courage, and even skill could be swallowed whole by the terrain. The helicopter banked low, finding a small plateau near Sortalo SAR, a peak overlooking the village of Chikol. The insertion point was chosen for its isolation, too steep for vehicles, too remote for local patrols. When the rear hatch opened, cold air flooded the cabin. One by one, the SEALs jumped into the darkness, boots hitting the earth with practiced precision. The Chinook lifted off, disappearing into the black, leaving only silence behind. The team checked their gear and began the climb toward their observation point. The ascent was brutal. Each man carried over 80 pounds of equipment: rifles, ammunition, radios, water, and supplies for several days of surveillance. The mountains towered over them like giants, sharp and endless, with cliffs that dropped thousands of feet into shadowed valleys. They climbed for hours until they reached a narrow saddle overlooking a cluster of villages below. Through their scopes, faint lights flickered in the darkness, signs of life, but also of danger. Murphy ordered a perimeter set. They settled into concealment, blending with the rocks and trees, whispering updates over encrypted radios. Morning arrived slowly, the sky shifting from deep purple to pale gold. From their position, the SEALs could see movement below, groups of men walking along goat trails, children herding animals, and the distant echo of gunfire from the valley. They observed quietly, scanning for Shah's fighters. By midday, the heat pressed down hard, and their canteens began to feel light. The stillness was broken when the rustle of footsteps echoed nearby to close. Moments later, 3 Afghan goat herders appeared, moving up the slope with their flock. The SEALs froze. The men weren't armed, just locals, old, poor, and terrified when they suddenly saw the Americans pointing rifles from their rocks. The SEALs detained them immediately, zip-tying their hands and forcing them to sit under guard. The air grew thick with tension. They now faced an impossible choice. According to the rules of engagement, they couldn't harm unarmed civilians, but letting them go risked exposing their position to the enemy. The radio signal was weak, no way to contact headquarters for instructions. The debate that followed would define their fate. Murphy, calm but visibly torn, gathered the team. "We let them go," he said finally. "We're not murderers. We'll move fast and get out before they can tell anyone." The others agreed reluctantly. They cut the restraints, and the herders disappeared down the slope, their eyes wide with fear. As the men vanished into the distance, the team knew they were compromised. The only question was how long before the enemy came. An hour later, the first signs appeared: movement in the trees, whispers carried on the wind. Axelson spotted armed men approaching from multiple directions. Within minutes, the ridge exploded in gunfire. Bullets cracked through branches, kicking up dirt and splintering rock. The SEALs returned fire, their suppressed rifles echoing through the valley. Dozens of Taliban fighters, maybe more than 100, swarmed up the mountainside, shouting and firing from all sides. The 4 SEALs fought back with ferocity, moving from cover to cover, communicating through short, calm bursts. The fight was uneven from the start. The insurgents had high ground, numbers, and local knowledge. The SEALs had precision and training in each other. Luttrell's rifle jammed once, and he cleared it while rounds shattered rocks inches from his head. Dietz took a round to his hand but kept firing. Murphy called out enemy positions, his voice steady, directing suppressive fire. They tried to break contact, retreating down the slope, sliding over rocks and dirt as bullets chased them. Then came the falls, long, punishing tumbles down near vertical cliffs. Each time they crashed, the air was knocked from their lungs, but they never stopped fighting. Their bodies were battered, faces blooded, yet their discipline held. Axelson was hit in the chest, Dietz in the leg, but they continued to fire back, covering each other's movement. Luttrell dragged Dietz behind a fallen tree, administering a tourniquet even as gunfire shredded the leaves above them. When the radio antenna snapped during the retreat, Murphy knew they had no way to call for help from their position. Without hesitation, he made a decision that would cost him his life, but save the legacy of his team. Crawling from cover, he exposed himself to enemy fire, climbing to a high rock outcropping where he could get a signal. Bullets tore through the air, striking his gear and body. Still, he managed to reach the satellite phone and contact a quick reaction force. "We're surrounded," he reported, his voice strained but calm. "Request immediate support." Even as he spoke, rounds hit him again and again. When the transmission ended, he collapsed, his final act ensuring that others would know their location. The sound of approaching helicopters soon echoed through the valley. The rescue force had launched within minutes of Murphy's call. 2 Chinook helicopters flew toward the ridge, carrying reinforcements from the 160th Special Operations Aviation Regiment and additional SEALs. But the mountains hid dangers beyond the visible. As one Chinook hovered to insert troops, a rocket-propelled grenade struck it midair. In an instant, the helicopter erupted in flames, crashing into the mountainside and killing all 16 aboard. The explosion was so powerful it shook the ridge where Luttrell and Axelson fought for their lives. The remaining SEALs continued the battle, refusing to surrender. Dietz was gravely wounded, his weapon destroyed. Yet he stayed in the fight until he fell silent. Axelson, hit multiple times, crawled through the rocks, firing until his last magazine was empty. Luttrell, the only one left alive, crawled deeper into the forest, bleeding, exhausted, but determined to survive. The Taliban scoured the mountains, searching for him. For hours, he moved through ravines and dry streams, drinking from mud puddles, his mind fading in and out of consciousness as night fell. Luttrell found a small spring and collapsed beside it. When he awoke, local villagers surrounded him, Afghan men from a nearby Pashtun village. They were armed but not hostile. Through gestures and broken phrases, they communicated that he was safe. The village elder invoked Pashtun Wali, the ancient tribal code of hospitality, which required them to protect a guest, even from enemies. Despite the threat from Taliban fighters nearby, they hid Luttrell, treated his wounds, and sent word to American forces through secret channels. For days, they risked their lives to keep him alive. When US helicopters finally arrived, the villagers led them to his location. The rescue team extracted Luttrell, the lone survivor of Operation Red Wings. His body was broken, his spirit scarred, but he lived to tell the story of his brothers who had fought and died beside him. In the aftermath, the operation was analyzed, studied, and honored. The battle on that Afghan mountainside became one of the most intense firefights in modern US military history. The names of Murphy, Axelson, and Dietz became symbols of courage, men who chose honor over survival, duty over comfort. Lieutenant Murphy was posthumously awarded the Medal of Honor, the first Navy recipient since Vietnam. Axelson and Dietz received the Navy Cross. Luttrell later wrote of their ordeal, not to glorify war, but to remember the sacrifice made by those who gave everything for each other. Back in the valleys of Kunar, time moved on. The villages rebuilt. The mountains remained silent witnesses to the blood that was spilled on their slopes. But among those who knew the story, soldiers, families, and citizens, the name Operation Red Wings carried a weight that would never fade. It wasn't just a mission. It was a testament to brotherhood, loyalty, and the limits of human endurance. Years later, when the sun sets over those same Afghan ridges, the wind still moves through the pine forests where 4 men once stood alone against overwhelming odds. Their echoes remain in the silence, whispered reminders of courage and sacrifice. And somewhere in that eternal quiet, you can almost hear Murphy's calm voice calling for help, not for himself, but for his team. It is there that their story lives forever, not in glory, but in honor. Operation Red Wings stands as a reminder that in war, victory isn't always measured by survival. Sometimes it's measured by the strength to do what's right, even when the cost is everything. The mountains of Afghanistan took 3 brave souls that day, but they could not take their legacy. That legacy endures in the hearts of those who remember, in the code of the SEALs who follow. and in the unbreakable bond of men who chose to stand together, no matter the odds. When the last light fades from the Afghan sky, the story of those 4 SEALs remains a quiet promise carved into the stones of Sortalo SAR, that courage, loyalty, and sacrifice will never be forgotten.